Have you ever walked into a room and felt the air shift, not because anything was said, but because of what wasn't? That cold silence. The way someone refuses to meet your eyes. The way they pass you by like you're invisible, all without a word. It's not peaceful. It's punishing. And if you've experienced it, especially in a relationship where love or respect is supposed to exist, I want to start by saying this: you are not imagining it. You're not being dramatic. And no, you're not asking for too much. The silent treatment is a form of control. And I know, that's a hard thing to admit, especially when it comes from someone you care about. Maybe it's a partner who goes quiet for days every time there's conflict. Maybe it's a grown child who stops answering your calls when you say something they don't want to hear. Or maybe it's a coworker who suddenly freezes you out at work, acting like you're not even there. That silence? It's not peaceful. It's not a break. It's not giving space. It's a power play. It's meant to keep you off balance, anxious, and desperate to make things right, even when you didn't do anything wrong. I remember speaking with a woman named Carol. She's 67, retired, and has 3 adult children. Her youngest son, Ryan, would call her often, but only when he needed something. One day, she finally told him she couldn't loan him any more money. She wasn't angry, just honest. And just like that, the phone went quiet. Days turned into weeks. No birthday call. No reply to her messages. She told me, "I felt like I had to beg my own son just to speak to me again. And I hated that I was even thinking about apologizing." That right there? That emotional squeeze, that's what the silent treatment is designed to do. It's not about solving a conflict. It's about making you feel like you caused a rupture, and that the only way to fix it is by giving in, staying quiet, or shrinking yourself. The problem is, when someone uses silence to punish, it forces you into a position where you're trying to earn back connection. And that is not love. That is not mutual respect. That is manipulation. Let's be clear, everyone needs space sometimes. That's normal. But healthy space comes with words like, "I'm feeling overwhelmed, and I need a little time to think. Let's talk later." That's communication. That's care. The silent treatment? That's punishment with a smile. And the more you allow it, the more it chips away at your self-worth. So what can you do when someone freezes you out like this? First, take a deep breath and remind yourself, their silence is not your shame to carry. You are not responsible for fixing someone else's emotional avoidance. You can care deeply for someone and still say, "I won't be manipulated like this." That doesn't make you cold. It makes you clear. If you feel strong enough, and the relationship is safe, you might try gently saying, "When you go silent like that, it hurts. I'm open to talking when you're ready, but I won't beg for your attention." Just that. Calm. Grounded. Clear. And if the silence keeps coming? If it's become a pattern in your life? Then I want to say something you might need to hear. You do not have to keep proving your worth to people who punish you with their silence. You don't have to keep chasing their love, their approval, their voice. Real connection doesn't need punishment. Real peace doesn't feel like walking on eggshells. So many women, especially as we get older, were taught that silence was better than conflict. That keeping things smooth, staying quiet, not rocking the boat, that was strength. That was maturity. But I'm here to say, your voice is not the problem. Your needs are not too much. You are allowed to expect respect, even when it's inconvenient for someone else. Silence that brings clarity? That's peace. Silence that brings anxiety? That's punishment. And the sooner we name that, the sooner we stop internalizing the guilt. The sooner we stop apologizing for asking to be treated like we matter. You matter. You always have. Whether you're 35 or 75. Whether it's your first time setting a boundary, or your 50th. You don't have to chase peace by surrendering your voice. You're allowed to take up space. You're allowed to speak up. And you are absolutely allowed to protect yourself from manipulative silence that disguises itself as calm. Even if it's coming from someone you love. Even if it's someone you raised. Even if it's someone who once made you feel seen. It is never too late to decide that you will no longer be punished for being human. And if nobody's told you this before, I'm telling you now, your feelings matter. Your voice matters. And the love that makes you feel like you have to earn it through silence? That's not love. That's control. Let's keep walking this healing path together. You're not alone in this. Not now, not ever. Sometimes the hardest part isn't the silence itself, it's the stories we tell ourselves in that silence. You sit there, wondering. Did I say too much? Should I have just let it go? Maybe I made a big deal out of nothing. Maybe I was the one who started it. Sound familiar? That's not your intuition talking. That's what manipulation feels like when it's done through silence. You start turning against yourself, doubting your own memory, questioning your own emotions, just to make sense of why someone suddenly shut you out. And the longer the silence goes on, the more power it holds. Because that's what it's designed to do. I once heard from a woman named Jean. She was 73, divorced for over a decade, and had been seeing a man she met at church. Things seemed easy at first, lots of laughs, dinners, walks. But whenever she brought up something serious, something real, like wanting to know where the relationship was headed or how he felt about commitment, he would disappear. No calls, no texts, sometimes for weeks. And when he finally resurfaced, he'd act like nothing happened. Laugh it off. Say she was being dramatic. It made her feel needy. Embarrassed. Like she had to shrink her feelings to keep him from pulling away again. But that wasn't love, and it wasn't peace. It was a pattern. A pattern where her silence became the price of his attention. And here's the truth. When someone uses silence to avoid, control, or punish, they are not creating space for healing. They are creating fear. They are teaching you to stay quiet if you want to stay connected. That is emotional control. It's just packaged in a softer form, no yelling, no name-calling, just distance and silence and that awful feeling in your gut. If you've been in that space before, I want you to hear this loud and clear. You never have to silence yourself to keep someone else comfortable. Your voice matters, even if it shakes a little. You are allowed to say, I don't feel safe when I'm shut out. You're allowed to say, this pattern isn't working for me. And you're allowed to stop reaching out when someone constantly withholds connection as punishment. That doesn't make you cruel. That makes you healthy. And yes, I know it can feel lonely at first. When you stop chasing after people who use silence as a weapon, the quiet might feel louder. You might wonder if you made a mistake. You might feel guilt, especially if it's a loved one, or someone who once meant everything to you. But here's what you'll notice if you stay strong, that silence no longer controls you. You start feeling your feet on the ground again. You start hearing your own voice more clearly. And eventually, you stop fearing their silence. Because it's not peace they were offering you, it was power, disguised as stillness. And you? You don't need to earn peace by tiptoeing around someone else's moods. You are allowed to have calm and clarity. You are allowed to want relationships where silence is used to reflect, not to punish. Think about that for a moment. What would it feel like to be in a relationship where silence was safe? Where silence was mutual, loving, intentional, not one-sided and full of fear. That's what healing creates. That's what you're building every time you refuse to chase someone who's gone cold to punish you. You are not too emotional. You are not too much. You are not too old to want better, or to expect better. So if you've been sitting in that lonely silence, feeling like you're the problem, please remember this: healthy people communicate. They don't punish. They don't disappear. And they don't make you beg for connection. You deserve people who stay present, even when things get hard. People who speak truthfully, not hide behind silence. People who respect your feelings, not use them against you. That's not asking for too much. That's asking for the bare minimum. And the more you recognize the difference between real peace and emotional punishment, the easier it becomes to say, I deserve better than this. And you do. You always have. You know what's interesting? So many women I speak with, strong, wise women, tell me the same thing. I'd rather be yelled at than ignored. Why is that? Because when someone yells, at least you know where you stand. You might not like it, but it's clear. With silence, you're left to fill in the blanks. And for women who've spent their lives trying to keep the peace, in marriages, families, or workplaces, those blanks fill up fast, with shame, self-blame, and second-guessing. Let's talk about that, because the silent treatment isn't just about the silence itself. It's about what that silence triggers in you. Maybe you were raised in a home where emotions weren't safe. Where your needs were met with cold shoulders or disapproval. Maybe you learned early that love was something you had to earn, by being quiet, good, pleasing. So when someone goes cold on you now, even at 60, 70, 75, it doesn't just hurt. It confirms a fear you've carried for decades. That if you speak your truth, love will disappear. That's why it hits so deep. And that's exactly why toxic people use it. Because they know it pulls you into old patterns of guilt, chasing, and people-pleasing. You might think, if I just apologize, maybe they'll come back. If I'm extra nice, maybe they'll stop being distant. If I stay quiet, they won't leave. But here's the truth you may need to hear again today. Silence is not love. Withholding affection is not maturity. Disappearing when things get uncomfortable is not strength. It's emotional avoidance. It's manipulative. And it's not your job to fix it. You are not responsible for the emotional immaturity of another adult. You can care deeply and still say, I don't accept this behavior anymore. You can love someone, a partner, a parent, even a grown child, and still say, your silence hurts me, and I won't chase you for connection. And you don't have to say it in anger. You can say it softly. With grace. With calm. You don't even have to explain yourself in long paragraphs. You can simply say, when you ignore me, I feel hurt. I want honest, caring communication, not silence. If that's not something you're willing to offer, I need to protect my peace. That's not being mean. That's being emotionally clear. Because every time you respond to toxic silence by shrinking, apologizing, or begging to be heard, you teach that person how to treat you. But every time you stand in your truth and refuse to play the game, something inside you begins to heal. You start remembering who you were before guilt became your default. You start honoring that little voice inside that says, this doesn't feel right. And slowly, gently, you create space for new, healthy connections to come in. Ones where you don't have to walk on eggshells. Where silence means rest, not punishment. Where communication feels safe. You might be thinking, but what if I lose them? Let's be real. You already lost them the moment they decided to punish you instead of talk to you. That wasn't connection. That was control. True connection requires two adults who show up, even when things are uncomfortable. It doesn't mean things are always easy or sweet. But it does mean that love doesn't disappear the moment you ask for honesty. Or speak your truth. Or have a bad day. And if that's not what you've been getting, you're allowed to step away. Even if it's been 30 years. Even if you were raised to stay silent. Even if people tell you you're too sensitive or too much. You are not too much. You are just now becoming too aware to keep living small. You are finally noticing that emotional punishment is not love. And the moment you see that clearly, really see it, is the moment you take your power back. You stop begging. You stop explaining. You stop waiting for someone else to change. And you start giving yourself the peace they keep trying to take away. That peace? It doesn't come from their silence. It comes from your clarity. And the more you choose that every day, in small ways, the easier it becomes to say, I am not afraid of your silence anymore. Because I am no longer abandoning myself to keep you close. You know, one of the most powerful shifts a woman can make, especially after decades of being the peacemaker, is this. Choosing to feel uncomfortable for a moment instead of manipulated for a lifetime. And I want to speak directly to the part of you that still wonders. Maybe I'm overreacting. Maybe they just needed space. Maybe it's my fault. That voice? That's not your intuition. That's your conditioning. You were trained to carry emotional weight that was never yours. To absorb moods. To apologize first. To keep things calm, even when it hurt you. You were taught that silence from someone you love is something you must fix. But let me tell you something with so much love. Grown adults who care about you don't punish you with silence. They don't disappear when you need clarity. They don't withhold affection just because they're upset. They don't treat communication like a weapon. They talk. They try. They stay present, even when it's messy. That's what emotional safety looks like. And you deserve that. Especially now. Especially after everything you've carried. You've spent enough years twisting yourself into knots to make things work. Enough birthdays, holidays, long nights waiting for someone to finally understand how deeply their distance wounds you. Let that season end. Let this next season be one of truth, quiet truth, grounded truth. Where you don't have to raise your voice to be heard. Where your presence is enough. Where your peace isn't held hostage by someone else's silence. You know that feeling in your gut, when someone goes quiet, and it feels like the air leaves the room? That's not just sadness. That's your nervous system responding to emotional punishment. And the beautiful thing is, you can learn to recognize it sooner. You can stop explaining yourself to people who already know how much their silence affects you, and choose to walk away instead. Or, if it's someone you need to remain in contact with, like a family member, you can set calm, loving boundaries. You might say, I'm here to talk when you're ready to speak kindly. But I'm not going to chase or guess anymore. Or, I love you, but when you go silent like this, it doesn't feel like love. And I deserve better communication. You don't have to fight. You don't have to beg. You don't have to shut down. You get to stand your ground softly. And yes, sometimes, when you stop reacting to the silent treatment, the manipulator may push harder. They might lash out or act like you're cold or uncaring. That's not a sign you're doing the wrong thing. That's a sign you're disrupting the dynamic. And that's a good thing. Because the more you honor your own emotional safety, the less you'll tolerate these old games. And that space you create? That silence you choose, not the one forced on you? That's where peace grows. Not the kind of silence that leaves you questioning your worth. But the kind that says, I don't have to fight or chase to be loved. I just have to stay connected to myself. I want you to hear this clearly, because I know it can be hard. You are not too old to walk away from toxic behavior. You are not too late to create new patterns. You are not broken or too sensitive for wanting kindness, clarity, and connection. In fact, wanting that means you are healing. It means you are waking up to the truth that love does not have to hurt. And silence is not a sign of strength, especially when it's used to cause fear, confusion, or guilt. So if someone you love has been using silence as a weapon, take a deep breath. You don't have to chase. You don't have to convince them of anything. You don't even have to explain yourself. Just come home to you. To the part of you that knows what love should feel like, soft, safe, steady. And let that part lead now. If this message spoke to you, I'd love to hear your story in the comments. So many women have gone through this in silence, thinking they were alone. You are not alone. And if you found this helpful, feel free to subscribe, only if it supports your healing. No pressure. You've given so much to others. Now it's your time. Your time to stop confusing silence with peace. Your time to stop chasing love that hides. Your time to remember. Real peace doesn't leave you guessing. Real love doesn't make you feel invisible. And you don't have to keep hurting to stay connected. You deserve peace. And it's not too late to claim it.